I just did the broadcast of the webinar for people who are participating. Thank you very much for being here. We will start by a video of our sponsors in a few minutes.
I would say the space industry is quite active and quite special. There is no job where you don't have multidisciplinarity. You have to be curious and to not just do what people ask you to do. Every day I start working on communicating a new project. It's a completely different world for me. Every field you can imagine, you can find a way to have an impact in space exploration. The number one difficulty is to find what you really like and what you really enjoy. If you found what you like, then the most difficult step is already done. So really, go for it. There's something in space that I think unites people. There's lots of countries involved there, and they all work together amazingly well. I think it's way more important than we realize. I'm hoping for a bit more women in the space industry because we are not that many, and sometimes when you see panels, it's all male, and you think, okay, are there any great women? Yes, they are. So I'm looking for a more diverse space. And to go further to the moon, to Mars, and so on. We really produce something which people want. The data our satellites deliver to our end users is something which makes a difference even to everybody's daily life, because every weather prediction you see on your smartphone, on the TV screen, does rely on the data we deliver. And being part of that process, of that organization, is great. My job is to make sure that the original user requirements of the National Weather Services are finally being met by the satellites being flown in space. A user requirement could be, for example, high-resolution wind speed. And requirements engineering makes sure that the final satellite, the instrument, the ground processing all work together such that the wind speeds which are produced meet the requirements of our users. I think Darmstadt, and especially the area, offers a lot for work-life balance. You can go, in 20 minutes, you're in the middle of the Odenwald, in the forest. You can go hiking, you don't see anybody. I personally do a lot of mountain biking there, and I can even cycle to work. And on the other hand, if you want to see city lights, you drive 20 minutes and you're in Frankfurt. And if you want to go even further, you're at the airport and you can basically fly everywhere from there.
I work at EUMETSAT as a remote sensing scientist, and my focus is on sea surface temperatures and sea ice surface temperatures from satellites. So I've always been interested in science and the environment, but I wanted to do something that meant something and that actually helped people. So working at EUMETSAT gave me the opportunity to combine all of these different interests. I think the job I do here makes a difference in the world, as well as affecting weather forecasts. It's also important to understand a changing climate. So we need to know the best possible knowledge of our ocean and the ocean's health so that we can monitor it and then understand how this may change in the future.
So the most exciting and rewarding part of my job is obviously when we have a launch and we get the first telemetry into the ground segment we just built, and we have the first payload telemetry coming in and the first products coming out. This doesn't happen every year, but we are working several years towards such a target. I believe the job I do makes a difference, especially when you watch weather forecast on the TV in the evening, which is made with images or data we provide from EUMETSAT. And also, for example, in the recent hurricane events in Florida, we provided support to NOAA to do their own forecast and see where the hurricane would go. So I really think it makes a difference.
Since the 1980s, OIP Sensor Systems has been an electro-optical partner for ESA. OIP developed custom-made high-performing optical payloads to provide images of planets in renowned missions such as Probe 1, Mars, and Venus Express. Our compact visual monitoring cameras are used to monitor the effective performance of space mechanisms and to make scientific images to be studied down on Earth. OIP's spectrometers support ESA and other space partners in planet observation missions, such as Probe 5. Those spectrometers are also used by scientists to analyze the Earth, Mars, and Venus atmosphere on board of Altius, Nomad, and SWOW. If you are looking for high-performance visualization from Earth to space, OIP is your partner by excellence.
Space is part of our lives today, bringing many benefits. In the near future, space will become an even more important part of our lives. Bringing these benefits to us requires numerous technologies to work together. Space Applications Services has been developing and delivering technology-enabled services, bringing the benefits of space to Earth for more than 30 years. Plan, prepare, develop, and operate equipment in space for our customers, such as the European Space Agency and NASA. Our strategy is to identify the right question, do the research, and develop the most suitable business solution. Today, we already provide anyone regular and frequent access to space. We open the door to research and manufacturing of novel products that do not exist on Earth. We train the astronauts of tomorrow, and we keep those working in space healthy and safe. We provide technology for in-orbit construction of low Earth orbit space stations and platforms. These will be the industrial powerhouses driving tomorrow's emerging markets, providing advanced materials and medicines. In the next decade, not only will we harvest the resources that are plentiful in space and which are depleted or scarce on Earth, but human settlements in space will use these resources to sustain their independent lives. Our technologies are improving life on Earth by predicting space weather events that can damage our electricity grids. Our astronaut exercise devices help to rehabilitate injured persons, and our robotics replace humans in hazardous environments. This is the near future. Space Application Services will be a part of it. We'll be happy to work on this future with you.
Travailler au pôle spatial Rue du Transine, c'est faire partie d'un espace de travail stimulant, offrant de nombreuses opportunités professionnelles. Milieu à haute plus-value, le pôle accueille des entreprises internationales dédiées aux applications spatiales. D'un côté, le centre ESSEC de l'Agence spatiale européenne à Redu. De l'autre, le parc d'activités économiques de Galaxia, développé par Idelux à Transine, qui comporte un centre d'entreprise, un incubateur de start-up, l'ESSEC Galaxia, l'Eurospace Center, le Galileo Integrated Logistics Support Center de la Commission européenne ou encore VitroG7. Ingénieurs, équipes pluridisciplinaires, start-ups et étudiants, des hommes et des femmes venus du monde entier s'y côtoient chaque jour au sein d'infrastructures modernes et innovantes, d'où naissent des projets de grande envergure, comme la gestion de l'opérationnalité des stations du système Galileo. Travailler au pôle spatial Rue du Transine, c'est faire partie d'un espace de mobilité situé au cœur de l'Europe. Entouré de grands axes routiers et le long de l'autoroute E411, le pôle bénéficie d'accès fluides et rapides depuis Namur, Bruxelles, Luxembourg et tous ses environs, en voiture et via les transports en commun. Travailler au pôle spatial Rue du Transine, c'est faire partie d'un espace authentique et naturel. Lieu de gastronomie et de patrimoine, la région entourant le pôle offre des occasions de sorties variées, telles que le festival de chasse-pierre, la foire agricole de Libranon, Libin et son musée Mudia, ou encore le village du livre de Redu. Ces infrastructures sportives modernes, son cadre naturel propice aux balades et ses nombreux lieux touristiques comme Bouillon, Bastogne, Turbuy ou encore La Roche en Ardennes. Travailler au pôle spatial Rue du Transine, c'est faire partie d'un espace culturel porté par de nombreux centres urbains rapidement accessibles. Namur, Luxembourg, Liège, mais aussi Marches, Rochefort ou Libramont. Situé à seulement 40 minutes du pôle, Namur propose une vie citadine dynamique et de multiples activités culturelles, musées, théâtres, expositions ou encore concerts. Travailler au pôle spatial Rue du Transine, c'est faire partie d'un espace de vie de qualité pour développer un réseau de connaissances et fonder une famille. Logement à prix accessible, proximité de centres hospitaliers ou encore universités, haute école et écoles internationales sont autant d'atouts essentiels pour le bien-être des habitants de la région. Vous aussi, faites partie du pôle spatial Rue du Transine. Rendez-vous dès maintenant sur investinluxembourg.be.
My name is Nicolas Helssen. I've been working for 3 months here at ESA Belgium in Transine as a ground system engineer.
My name is Lise Mouton and I'm a recruiter and employer branding at ESA Belgium.
My background is engineering for 5 years, and the purpose of my job is to be sure that there are not any issues with the infrastructure on the Earth for the signal coming from space.
Well, my background is a bachelor degree in human resources management, and I joined ESA Belgium 2 years ago, firstly with an internship of 1 year, and now for the undefined contract.
I chose ESA because I really wanted to work in the field of space, and after my master thesis they asked me if I wanted to join the team, and I said yes directly.
First of all, I was afraid because I didn't know nothing from the space domain, but all the colleagues explained me their job, the duties.
I loved space for a long time now, so I wanted to work in, not only for passion, but to work. Every day is different because you don't know what really you have to do, Sometimes you have to plan to go on travel somewhere. Sometimes you have to work on a project.
I chose to join the company because they were open to have a junior profile.
What I really like here, it's a family-sized company, so it's not too big, so it's really easy to talk with people if you have an issue or something.
Everyone knows everybody, we are around the same age, and there is a good atmosphere, good ambience.
There's strong knowledge in the Galileo program, so for a young engineer as me, it's really interesting.
It's exciting to work for a space company. Everyone can have an access to join the space domain, so why not you?
Space and its exploration has fascinated humans since centuries. We send a few space probes in the solar system. We have even sent robots and rovers on Mars surface to explore it. And we even had a few city trips on the moon. We also have people living in space in the International Space Agency every day since a couple of years now. But the next step, the step further to learn more about space, is definitely to go on Mars and to have manned exploration of Mars. How easy is it? Can we just take our lunch packet with us and go on Mars? No, definitely we cannot do that. Because we need, for our life, oxygen, water, and food. And those elements represent massive amount of weight that we cannot just send on Mars. So we need to recycle the true waste to be able to sustain their life during space exploration, long-term space exploration. And this was the idea that was developed in the ESA project by the European Space Agency 25 years ago now. In the ESA project, the scientists are trying to build an artificial ecosystem that will allow recycling all true waste, urine, CO2, but also fecal materials if needed, to produce oxygen, water, and food to sustain life of crew during years of mission. In the University of Mons, we are working on oxygen production based on cyanobacteria using different nitrogen sources. The University of Mons also participate to this space exploration and try to develop new methods to follow and optimize oxygen production by those microorganisms. Those projects also have a lot of application on Earth, because treating nitrogen waste, urine for example, using cyanobacteria is also a major challenge for space, but also for Earth application. If you want to learn more about this, just follow my talk about the ESA project and humans' implication in producing oxygen in space using cyanobacteria. See you.
Okay, before Good evening. Before launching Switch to Space, our event, I would like to ask you some questions very quickly. Why are you interested by Switch to Space and by space?
I'm part of a student association at Lucelle Louvain, and we cover a lot of topics about space and astronomy. And personally, I'm a student in civil engineering and biomedical sciences, and I would like to work in space. So this is why it's very interesting for me.
A future astronaut?
Maybe.
And you?
I think the interesting about space is that this is where the things are moving, and you're always at the cutting edge of the field you're walking in. Sorry. So it's a very interesting work environment, and you can always find something new to do.
Thank you. And you?
I think the different events allow you to meet the sector in Belgium and the different stakeholders. It's very interesting.
Thanks. And you?
Well, I completely agree with what has been said already. I'm freshly graduated as a space studies student. So this event is perfect to meet some people and to grow my network.
Okay, thanks a lot.
I'm more specifically interested in Switch to Space simply because the company that I work for, Veoware Space, uses it as leverage to meet new clients, to look for people who are looking for internships or writing their master's thesis. And we just came out of an interview just now. So I think it's a very interesting event that puts everybody around the table.
Thanks a lot. And you?
Well, I happen to be the director of an executive MBA program that focuses on training managers for the space and defense sectors. And obviously, I'm interested to hear what are the trends in the space sector, and also to advertise my diploma, obviously.
Okay, thanks. And I go now to the speakers, and I would like to ask you why are you interested by space? What happens in your life that you are interested by space?
Well, just when I was a teenager came the I told you that last week already, Dominique, but came the remastering of the Star Wars movies. And so I was able to see them in the cinema. And it was a life-changing experience. And I thought, okay, let's go there. Let's go to space, galaxies, planets. Let's go and explore. And here I am.
So it's movies. Okay, and you?
Hey, Dominique. Basically, my whole family is in aviation. I thought I could try a little bit higher. And so far, I'm doing my best for that.
Thanks. Thank you.
Well, I started my career in financial audit, and after doing that for a year, I wondered, do I want to do this for the next 40 years? And I decided no. And what could be more exciting? And I tried to apply to ESA and got a job as a trainee because I thought it would be much more exciting than basically auditing companies. So that's how I got into space.
So there is not only people who are scientists who are working in the space sectors. That's very interesting.
For me, I always thought that space exploration was cool, but also I think space is one of the few fields where you can have a global impact here on Earth with systems that are working in space. So that's why I thought it was super interesting to work in.
Okay, thanks.
Well, for me, I discovered the space with my PhD thesis, and well, I made some parabolic flight in Houston, then sounding rockets, and finally I made my experiment in the Space Lab D2 mission. And during that time, I discovered a really wonderful world, and I jump in finally.
Yes, to work in space is for me the realization of a dream, because when I was young and watched the TV and see the Apollo mission, and it was very amazing. And for me, what I like in that is really all the technical challenge is what I like. In fact.
Okay, thanks a lot to everybody. Well, we are here in the Chalet Robinson in Brussels. It's on a little island. It's a very nice place. And so we decided to make it here also to know our how did you say it? Our patrimoine, how did you say? Heritage, and also because it's important for the students and for the professionals to make networking. So we will start maybe a little bit early, but that's not important. We will launch Switch to Space. And good evening to everybody, wherever you are, be it in Belgium or somewhere else in the world. And some are joining us from very, very far countries. And I checked today, for example, Algeria, Japan, United States, Turkey, or India, and Australia. And of course, there are a lot of European countries. Do you know what it means that we are coming so far countries? It means that space links us beyond the borders, and this is really great. So students and young professionals, this event is made for you. And do you know why? I will explain you why. Because we have been in numerous universities with space experts, and we have observed that most of you love to watch launches of new spacecraft, love to see pictures, movie from space, love to see astronauts working on a rocket. But many of you, too many, don't think to embark on a career in the space sector. It's strange. It's really strange. And it's unfortunate, as the sector is in good shape, and also it continues to recruit actively. So where is the problem? You are attracted by space, but you don't think to work in the space sector. And personally, I see two reasons of that. The first one, the sector is too discreet. It works too much into its inner cycle. And the second reason, the career perspective into space, within space, greatly expands today in numerous fields: medicine, agronomy, biology, economy, defense, security, law, and many, many other fields. So application. So the diversity of its scope is not yet well known. And it's still difficult today for students and young professionals to find an overview of the numerous jobs in space. So this is the reason why the Super Belgium Switch team launched the second edition of Switch to Space. Switch to Space, it's an event organized on 8 days with more than 40 experts. And today is the day 7, last day before the end of Switch 2. And of course, you know that this topic is about new space and space business. The speakers will share with you their expertise, explain various opportunities of career prospect in space. They will share insights into their individual path, their job, their vision of the future of space, just simply to help you to make the best choice for your future career. And keep this in mind. This is important. In the next future, most of the job will be linked to space. So make your professional life exciting and enjoy Switch to Space. This was my introduction. I will, before passing the floor to, no, don't applause. And before passing the floor to Mohammad, I would like to present the two leaders of the topic 7. So it's Mohammad Iranmanesh and Thierry du Pré-Werson. Alors, Mohammad is a Switch member from a long time. It's a long time you are a member of Switch Space, but this year you decide to be member of the team, and this is great. So Mohammad is a space system engineer with a strong engineering background. He completed his dual degree at Louvain, at Université Catholique de Louvain and ESA Space in France, with a certificate in management of innovation from HEC Paris. He has since led the technical work of a range of projects for ESA, involving space hardware at all stages of the project's life cycle. He also co-founded Light.Space, a Belgium startup providing a novel platform for microgravity research using glidoparabolic flights. Beside this, and this is important too, Mohammad is also the national point of in Belgium for Space Generation Council advice. Oh, no, it's the Advisory Council, sorry. So, and Thierry du Pré, first of all, I must say that Thierry is a strong pillar of Switch to Space, Newspace, from early beginning. Yes, it's a long time. So Thierry is the CEO of SpaceBel, a Belgium-based company involved in the development of space infrastructure software systems and Earth monitoring application. He is civil engineer in electronics from the University of Liège. In October 1989, after a career of 9 years in software development for SIT Electronics, a telecommunication company, he joined SpaceBel to be in charge of the ESA Columbus-related projects. He is also chairman of Wallonie Espace, vice president of Belgo Space, and is member of the board of directors of several organizations, Skywin, Agoria, and Newspace, which organize Switch to Space. So it's finished for me, but it's the beginning for you, Mohammad, so I give you the floor.
Thank you very much for having us here, Dominique. And for those who don't know, so Dominique Tielemans is the chair of Newspace. And after a great career of 27 years in politics, marked by an active involvement in the space sector through chairing the Space Group Senate and leading the European Interparliamentary Space Conference, she launched Newspace in 2014 in order to link students to Belgian space expert. And she's currently the chair of EURISI, board member of Vitrocise Belgium, and member of the advisory board of ESP, as well as VP of the IAF. So a lot of honors, and we're very happy to be here today with Dominique. Thierry, if you have a few words, or we can...
No, it's okay.
Okay, great. Then without further ado, we are very happy to have today with us Walter Peeters connecting from Zoom, who's going to be presenting the topic. As you know, this is topic number 7, new space. And so Professor Walter Peeters is the President Emeritus of the International Space University. He is also a full member of the International Academy of Astronautics. He actually started his career in management position in the construction and petrochemical industries. So a great example of switching to space coming from another industry, which is something that everyone can do here. So Professor, if you're here.
Yeah, I'm here. I'll try to switch the screen. Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, I do, at least.
Okay, okay. So pity that I cannot be there, but crossing 2 borders is a bit of a challenge these days. So thank you for accepting that I can do this remotely. I was planning to give a little bit of an overview of what we're talking about in the new, if you say the word new space economy. My screen is not moving from one to the other. I'm stuck on the first page.
Professor Peeters, maybe try to share the screen.
Yes, I share the screen. Is it not working?
Now it's working. Now I see the second one.
Okay. So sorry for that. I would like in a few words to give a bit of a history, only a few seconds, about what happened in space. In fact, we can see 3 waves in the space economy. First wave, and I'll show them with the names, was the governments who did space activities. That was in the 1950s, 1970s. So they used government money, so taxpayers' money, to do big projects like putting a human in space, a human on the moon, and so on. Once there were humans on the moon, that interest went a little bit down. So we went to the second phase. That means the companies who learned a lot from this went into commercial space. So they were dividing their income and gave money and made satellites, operated satellites, first telecommunication satellites, then other ones. Now we see a third wave for which we need a lot of youngsters and a lot of young people to participate, which we call Newspace. Just to give a feeling, at the moment, maybe a little bit surprising, the total space sector is something like 1/4 government, 3/4 is commercial and new space already. So you must realize that what we're talking about is a change from 100 to 0%, because it was 100% government. It's now 25% government, 75% commercial and new space. So you see the enormous growth of the commercial and the new space sector. If we talk about new space without giving too many details and too many definitions, what are we talking about versus traditional space? Traditional space was financed by government money, by taxpayers' money, so we had to be very careful. I worked for ESA for many years, so we wanted to be sure that whatever we did was reliable, was flying, were no problems. So we were very risk averse, which we had to be, because we were working with government money. We also wanted to have every time new technologies and customized satellites. New space works different. New space are people like many of you listening in who risk their own money. So they want to make a certain quick profit by making more software-driven than hardware-driven applications which are benefiting to society, benefiting to the world. That's all very theoretical. Let me try to give it a little bit easy way of explaining it. If you go into now the new space business, I would say you have two possibilities. The first one is the cheapest one. That means you're going to use existing signals from navigation, like GPS signals, which you all know from the navigation system in the cars, Earth observation, which sometimes you have to pay, sometimes you don't have to pay, telecom signals. You're going to combine them with a smart algorithm for specific applications. So this is the advantage, what we call financially, that it is a low capex. That means a low capital expenditure. So you don't have to invest a lot of money. You can do a lot of things with it. You can look at tracking containers, tracking cars. You can detect illegal waste dumping. So you can already do a lot of that. And many, many companies, I will show you afterwards, many companies are earning quite good money as startups and already beginning companies. The second thing is much more spectacular, I would say. In the past, what we did was put big satellites in geostationary orbit. There is a bit of a risk on that because the satellite is heavy, the satellite is expensive, and if the launch fails, you have a big problem. So what you can also do is put a constellation of small satellites and you put them in a low Earth orbit, for instance, a polar or a sun-synchronous orbit. Because they turn faster than a geostationary satellite, it means you need much more of these. But you spread the risk. You can launch 10 or 20 every time. Well, if that launch fails, it's bad. It's always bad, a launch that fails, but it's not catastrophic. With that, you can do virtually the same thing as with geostationary satellites. You put enough in space. So we're talking about very, very big amounts of very small satellites, which are cheap, as you can see on this slide. Again, we have a better risk sharing. Do roughly the same things. Of course, this is require much more investment than the previous one, but it is very, very rewarding. And you can see that if I give some examples of companies which are working in the space sector, for instance, you can see a lot of companies working on Earth observation. I just point out two companies because I know them very well, as they were students of mine a few years ago. Spire, who started here at ISU 7 years ago. Planet was Planet Lab before. They are putting big constellations of satellites in space, but small, relatively inexpensive satellites, which have a limited lifetime. But let's not go too much negative about the limited lifetime. Technology is changing so fast that it's maybe not a big disadvantage to have a limited lifetime, because you want to have always satellites in space which are up to date. You have also providers, as you see here, the value-added companies. They are not launching satellites, but they are going to give services to the Earth observation community by using artificial intelligence or using what we call GIS, which is making maps out of the space data or making something understandable for the user out of the space data. There are also in the communications, there are a number of new developments, which I'm pretty sure many of you, because you're space interested, are aware of. Broadband as well as narrowband. Broadband is of course the most spectacular, but if you want to give a broadband service, you need hundreds and hundreds of satellites. Typical example are Starlink from our friend Elon Musk, or the Kuipers group, which is from another friend, Jeff Bezos, OneWeb, which has some problems, but is now taken over by another consortium. Or you go more narrowband for specific applications. Example, Fleet, which is working with a constellation of satellites for pointing specific applications. Again, here there is room for people who help that market by giving additional services like the one I'm putting here. So these are the classical ones. What we see is also that more and more we are launching satellites now more individual in certain orbits. So you see a new world coming up, which will very, very exponential over the next few years, of small satellites, dedicated small satellites, which for instance, will launch from the Southern Hemisphere or from Kiruna, to give an example. We launched a number of small satellites in a polar orbit. So that's another new activity which is now working, including not only launchers, as you can see here, which is typically the SpaceX return launchers, but also other companies who are working on robots, who are working on planetary aspects, because a robot has also a terrestrial application, of course. And we even see now, as you all know, we see now new space companies working in the field of space exploration. That was not the case 10, 15 years ago, but you have all seen successes from Elon Musk with SpaceX, bringing people to the International Space Station. That was frankly something we could not even have dreamt of, not me at any case, many, many years ago. So there are all sorts of applications, all sorts of areas, depending on what you like most, where you see many, many new companies starting over the last decade. If you look at the evolution of new space companies, you virtually can see that there is a near exponential curve. It was just starting around 2000, and look now, it's now a very big area, an area which is waiting for all of you to join if you're young, and it will continue to grow. So the new space companies, which are different from the traditional ones, the last statistics I saw from a report which is only sent out a few weeks ago was they counted 862 serious companies already on the market with a very, very big turnover of 135 billion. So you see this curve, you see the exponential growth of new space, which, as I said, needs a lot of dynamic young engineers like many of you who are listening in. Now, it could also be that you want to do something else, that you want to do something yourself. Contrary to the traditional space sector, it means that you want to find equity funding. What does equity funding mean? It is that you find a partner who has money, professional or private, and who gives money to you in exchange of shares. So they will give you some money, but say, I want to have 30% of your shares. Theoretically, you always go into 3 steps. There can be exceptions, but this is a little bit the general scheme that we always see. First, and very important, by the way, is you have to find yourself a little bit of money. It can be direct money. It can also be indirect, that you say, okay, the first year I'm willing, or the first 2 years, I'm willing to work for a small salary, and then we'll see later. So that is in general called the 3F. Founders, maybe you have friends who are believing in you, your family may believe in you. So you go on the market with a bit of your own money. Then if you're lucky, you will find a business angel who likes your idea. And it will give you a second step of money. If your business is turning, you will have to go to the more professional financial space people, which are, for instance, the venture capitalists or private equity firms, and they will give you then the financing to you, in particular if you have a high request for capital. How do you start as a youngster in the space business? Well, the most traditional way, and probably even the best way, is to go first and work in an incubator. I'll give you an example of a very famous incubator in Europe is the ESA Big system. So the Business Incubator Center, Big is Business Incubator Center. How do you go in there? The first thing you have to do is a business plan. So you have to make a business plan, one, let's say, most important even, to convince yourself, because if yourself are not convinced, you cannot convince a second party either. And also to convince these people to house you and to help you for the first maximum 2 years. And then afterwards, you are supposed to be on your feet and to go. A business plan, more and more, you see at the moment, the 10-20-30 rule as a business plan. What does that mean? Is that in many business competitions, they ask you to make 10 slides, to present them during 20 minutes, and to use a big font, because the people looking at it are not so young as you anymore, so they need a little bit of a bigger font to be able to read very well. Roughly, you can change it, but you can see here what most of the people expect for you to present. Who are you? What's your title? What's your company? Where are you? What problem do you want to solve? You have detected the problem, you want to solve it. And how are you going to solve it? So there are 3 slides. Then the magic under it. So what technology will you use, which is not used at this moment yet, to solve that problem? And then you will have to tell the people that you know the market. So, okay, I'm going in a market. I will have a certain market share. How am I going to capture that market share? What are my competitors? Very important. Very often people are not looking very well in the competitors. And at the end, you say, who am I? What are my colleagues? Who is the players in my company? What is their education? And you end with, that is my financial projection for the next few years. And that is what I want from you to contribute to my company. And in exchange of that, that is the share that I give you. Is there a future there? Yes, a very big one. If I may end with that one, here again is a slide from a report from Euroconsult, very recent report, who compared the last 10 years with the next years in one area. I admit it's in one area, but I give it as a good example in the small sat market. So the small satellites, small satellites, they are predicting that whereas we are launching something like 180 satellites in average over the last 10 years, we will launch nearly 1,000 satellites. So you can imagine 1,000 simple satellites. We're not talking about very complex satellites, but still the weight is going up. The average weight is supposed to be 170 kilograms in the future. So there is a big market here. You see the figures down here compared to what is happened in the past. I close here for those who are interested to give you a little bit of background information, but the message, which also was given by Dominique, is very clear. This is the moment for you. If you want to go into the space sector, this is it. Forget now that there were some problems at the moment with COVID. We should not, we should ignore them, but you have the chance, and I really envy you, you have the chance to join a very, very interesting sector. As said in the introduction, I came from another sector, which frankly, I found a bit boring. I went to the space sector, which completely opened my horizon and was much more interesting. So join it. It's the moment. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this great overview. I think as the chairs usually have to do an introduction to the topic, but tonight we had the pleasure to have you here. So thank you very much again for making it easy for us and giving this great overview. So to all the attendees, if you have any question, please feel free to write it down in the chat. We'll have some time at the end as well, but if as we go through the presentation, if you have any question, write them down and then we can answer them as we go. So while you're writing your question, I do have one for you, Mr. Peeters, which is, so tonight we have the pleasure of having a lot of different companies who are involved in the new space industry in Belgium and in Europe. But usually a lot of people think that we still have a lot of catching up to do in Europe. So I wanted to ask you, like, how you see the difference between new space in Europe and in the United States, for example, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of new space industry in Europe, and how do you see this evolving in the future?
It's very rapidly changing. It is true that many years ago, if you wanted to start up a business, it is true, we should not ignore it. The place to be was in Silicon Valley. At the moment, to give you an example, 50% of the venture capitalists are in America, 50% are abroad. So you see it growing. I don't think you have to shy away anymore to find money in Europe. You have the ESA BIX, you have other systems. It is an ongoing process, and I think for the younger people which are online, by the time that they will need the money, which is maybe in 2, 3, 4 years, they will find equal, if not better opportunities here in Europe as in America, although, of course, you should not underestimate the power of other countries. But one thing which is clear, if I see it with my students, is that where you put yourself, if it is in Europe or in Luxembourg or in Brussels, it is virtually independent from your finances. I know a lot of companies in Europe which are financed by people from abroad. So this is not a problem anymore. Europe is going to have the same boom in new space as it was a few years ago in America. And don't worry, you're in the right place on the right moment.
Thank you. So good news, I hear. So we are also here, if at the venue, if there's anyone who has a question, you can also pass the mic. But we have a question from the chat, and the question is, what would you, from Sam, who asks, what would you advise local or regional government? What should they do to stimulate new space entrepreneurship? Are you satisfied with what's being done at the moment by the government, or you think there's room for more?
The problem is if you want to attract a business angel or a venture capitalist, your product has to have already a certain maturity. A maturity which we call in our technical world TRL, which means technological readiness level. So a certain maturity. What I think the governments should do more, which for instance ESA BIC is doing very well, is to allow young people to get access to grants, 50,000, 100,000, to give them a chance to develop their product and to make a decent business plan. So I think what I was also just recently inviting the Portuguese government when they asked my advice on the same thing is we should have more regional funds to help young people to develop a business plan and to do maybe the first test and the first experiments.
Thank you. Thank you for this answer. I think, so thank you very much. And if you have any other question for Mr. Peeters, feel free to still write them down, and we're gonna gather them and make sure that we ask them at the end of the all the presentation. But it's already time to go to the next speaker. We have 4 different people who are going to talk to us tonight. So who are gonna be quite diverse in terms of experience and also industry that they're involved in. So let's start already with Mr. Oliver Dupont from Lambda-x. And while he's turning on his presentation, so Olivier Dupont is the CEO of Lambda-x. During the first part of his career, he was involved in academia. He worked mainly on microgravity research at the ULB, where he was involved in the development of various microgravity experiments on board sounding rockets and the Spacelab D2 mission. In parallel with his scientific research, he developed as a project manager optical equipment for space and industrial applications. And in 1996, he founded with 2 partners, Lambda-x, who designs, develops, and manufactures imaging and metrology optical systems. And we're looking forward to his talk. Yeah, the screen is shared.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen. Well, the title I decided to, well, and the title of the talk I decided to present to you, it's Ground to Space for Ground, Ground to Space for Space, 2 methods generating profits with innovative space development. And I'm very happy to be the second talk just after the really very interesting talk of Professor Walter Peeters. In fact, this one gives maybe another approach, an approach from a technical company. And I propose to follow the following points. The first, I will make a very short presentation of Lambda-x just to give you an overview what we are doing, just to give you some pictures. And then I will propose a vision from the classical space and how we can work in classical space, but also in new space and tech transfer. And following that, few words about new space, tech transfer, and of course, conclusions. So let's go first with Lambda-x. Yeah. If it works. Yeah. So Lambda-x is a company located in Nivelles. We are 43 with various specialization. You will find there techniques, engineers, doctors, engineers, old professor. And the core activity of the company, it's related to optics at the level of system or subsystems. What we are doing, it's conception, prototyping, qualification, up to industrialization and manufacturing of optical system or subsystems, mainly for imaging and metrology. And of course, we have the nice certification, which are absolutely necessary to work in space or aerospace environment, like EN 9100. So about the market, we are covering 3 markets. The first one, the original one, it's of course space, where we are developing and manufacturing systems or optical subsystems, including scientific instruments. We are manufacturing this system. We are creating serial productions also for security. And last but not least, we are deeply involved in the different technical innovation for ESA, which is really a reservoir of new technology and new methodology. What I can say, it's till now, it's that Lambda-x is a pure market. It's a pure product of the tech transfer, because what we are doing in industry and in ophthalmics is really the transfer of methodology or the transfer of technology developed in space. And today, the second pillar, it's really industry, where we are designing, we are producing, and we are creating serial productions of optical systems for different industries. So it's really a service we are providing to all the communities. And the third one is ophthalmics. So you will say, ophthalmics is also part of industry, and you are fully right. But the main difference between industry and ophthalmics is that in industry, we are providing a service, while in ophthalmics, we are starting by selling products, cut system, custom off the shelf. So it's really products developed and based on space technology. So, I'm sorry, well, is it okay? About space activity, well, the question is really, how can we use this tremendous reservoir of technologies and methodologies filled by space research? If we are looking to the global wonderful expansion of technology coming from space and created for space, that means nearly 70 years of research, we have started with demo, with the Sputnik, then Protos, with the first launchers, to reach today extremely powerful tools like the International Space Stations, where you will find continuously astronauts coming from all the parts of the world, just to providing manpower to create science, to create technology there 300 or 400 kilometers above us. So today we have clearly mature and reliable technologies. But in fact, if you are looking to demos, to the proto and to the technology developed, these evolution of the technologies are not simply aligned with the TRL, which is the technological readiness level. In fact, there is something else. It's really the strategic readiness level. And this is really the key points. This is really the competition between the East and the West 50 or 70 years ago that's created this tremendous number of technology we have now. So in fact, what we see is that the demo, the proto, and the mature and reliable technologies are growing, of course, in TRL, but also in strategic readiness level. And later, probably with the spirit of European Space Agency, this SRL progressively shift from a scientific readiness level. So next question is, how can we do business with space? First, it's clear that we can continue to fill the reservoir of technology and make it bigger and bigger. It's finally the classical technology development. It is extremely important because if you are looking to the request of ESA, these requests are continuously filled with new ideas, with new developments, and they need companies to create it. In fact, you start with demo, you continue with proto, and finally you have a mature technology able to be included in an equipment which will be onboard satellites or International Space Station. The second approach is to try to transform the SRL into CRL, customer readiness level. And it's clear that the talk of Professor Peeters was directly linked to that. It's clear that you need tools to create an interest from the customer, but you really need to attract it. First, to have money to develop your system, but for sure, to be able to fulfill their requests. And this is really a critical point. So in fact, you suppress SRL and you replace it by CRL. Then you have to increase the value of your CRL. And that's really the job of Newspace. Today, well, now what we have a nice plane, CRL TRL, which is a plane where you will find all the evolution of the space activity. It can be classical space, the blue dots. It can be new space, the red line. Nevertheless, it exists also another way to use what we have developed for space initially. And the idea is to move outside this space plane by creating tech transfer. What does it mean, creating tech transfer? It's finally create or jump in another CRL-TRL plane. And that's what different companies are doing. And at Lambda-x, we are using the tree approach. It's not working. Do you hear me correctly? Okay.
Yes,
Maybe
we
like
hear
that.
you.
Well, about Newspace, I think it requires a new approach. In fact, I will directly jump the specific point related to technology. I will not duplicate what was perfectly and really nicely done by Professor Peeters. But what are the key points? If you are comparing classical space and new space, there is a big difference. The first one is in classical space, what we have really complex system, multi-user equipment. Why do we have that? Because it costs a lot, and the opportunity to launch such system were relatively few, I would say. In new space, what we have to do is to keep it simple and easy. We have to target on one set of specification. We should try to focus exactly on the objectives of the experiment, the objectives of your subsystem. In space, we have also huge constraints related to quality insurance. Quality insurance is absolutely mandatory when you imagine systems that have to work during years and years and years, or system included in satellites, including people, for instance. But if you are jumping in new space, we should think to another approach, having a kind of quality grades. It's not necessary to have a Formula One if you have simply to go from home to your job, to your company. I think we have to think the same way. You have to have the same approach for space and to design system good enough. Good enough means that you will fulfill the job, but it will remain affordable from a financial point of view. Again, if you are looking to classical space, it's always customized system, always challenging from a technical point of view. What we should try to have in new space, it's a kind of standardization, a modular approach. We have to be fast. We have to react quickly. We have to follow the request from the customer. Another interesting point is classical space is techno-driven for sure. We are developing system. The first challenge is to demonstrate that technology works. If we are jumping in new space, you have to turn your mind and thinking in CRL, customer readiness level. And I have already said, extremely high cost on one side and try to make it affordable on the other side. Few words, if we are thinking to quality grades, in fact, the real question is, what would be the cost of a failure or a reduced lifetime of your product? And well, the answer is directly linked to two things. The first is the launch cost per kilograms. It's clear that if it is extremely high, you must be sure that it will work correctly. If the number of opportunity to launch your system increase, first you will have a decrease of the launch cost and the number of opportunity will increase. So you may accept that a small percentage may fail. And just for giving you an idea, we had to provide an answer to CNES a few years ago for Minisat created by students, and they request a very specific objective. So we had two approaches. The first one is to design a nice one, exactly following the standard space rules. And the other is to select a very nice high quality COTS system, but you can find it on the shop, disassemble it, ungrease it, fix the different adjustments, check the performance, and deliver it. And so we did it. And CNES accepted this approach because the price was reduced by 5. Of course, we may have a limited lifetime simply because in optics, if you are using cemented lenses, this will be affected by radiation. Another approach, which is also important and a driving factor in new space, is having a modular approach. Try to avoid to start reinventing the wheel every time. The idea is to have bricks like the Lego, and you identify the first one, then the second one, and finally, you have the possibility to select the different bricks in order to be fast at lower price and to propose the right equipment to new space industry. And exactly what we are doing with a set of objectives in the visible or in the infrared. And on the lower part, it's clearly selecting the right bricks just to follow the correct path in order to try to fulfill a maximum of the specification of the customer. And here also, the idea is not to fulfill all the specification, but to accept and to suggest to the customer that he has to make a trade-off between the price and the specification. The second part is tech transfer. When space research has positive collateral impacts on Earth, it's clear that ESA wants to have the technology developed for space having an impact on Earth. Cool stuff on Earth, they say. And the vision and the mission of the technology transfer program of ESA, it's clearly demonstrate that the European space industry should solve the problem we face here on Earth. Everything is around that. They want to do that, and they propose a lot of support. As Professor Peeters says just before, you can have some support from the European Space Agency to develop your technology, to make the first proof of concept. And if it works, why not going further? So today, at the level of the ESA, they have already created more than 200 spin-offs. They have more than 700 patents. And finally, it creates 2,500 jobs in Europe and having 65 million euro impact already. At the level of the variety of technology, you will find patents and companies acting in a lot of domains. Sometimes it looks very strange that you may have a tech transfer, for instance, from propulsion into a ground-based equipment. Nevertheless, it exists. And finally, I will just present one tech transfer we have made at Lambda-x. It's how we were working when the transformation from a development we made initially from fluid physics and his transfer in ophthalmics. So the main idea was first to try to validate or to verify the flatness of a liquid gas interface in microgravity. And the question was, how is it possible to do it very rapidly in order to quickly react during the 6 minutes of a sounding rocket flight, keep it easy, keep it really simple and precise. And so what we did, we create first a phase shift fusion. We mixed two technology, which is classical technology in optics. We made sounding rocket equipment. It was launched in Kiruna. We have very nice results, and these results were really published several times by the scientific team. But in parallel, when we saw the capability, when we saw the performance of the system we have developed for space, having the possibility to measure very accurately the shape of the free liquid gas interface, what we thought is, how is it possible to use that in another sector? So what we did, we took our spectacle glasses, we put it in, and by doing that, what we saw is that finally the fringes, which is finally equivalent to the fringe we saw defining the geometry of the free liquid gas interface, this fringe gave the performance of the optical glasses. And so what we did, we decided to patent first this technology, and then we were to the regional government, as it was a question raised to Professor Walter Peeters, and then we did it, and we received the support for the Walloon region. And from this very first development we made, we create today really a range of equipment which is now used really worldwide for the quality control of contact lens, intraocular lens, and spectacle glasses. And today, these space technologies include in all these equipment with the adequate software. And we are covering, let's say, nearly all the world with more than 90 customers, and we are serving 120 productions. The small history of Lambda-x and all application of tech transfer. So in conclusion, I give you a very rapid overview of the ways to do business in space and with space. A few words about the Newspace, and I'm convinced that if you want to jump in Newspace, you have to change the classical space, and about space tech transfer away for the European space industry. Really sorry. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation, the point of view of a technical company, and thank you for introducing me to the strategy readiness level and the customer readiness level, which were new and very interesting to me. Do we have any question in the chat? If not, so my question would be, so you talked about how you try to switch, technologies from space to other industries. Is there any other success story that you can share, or about what Lambda-x has done before, maybe from space to other industry, or the opposite? Is there any other success story you can share with us?
Yes, we have another one, which is really at the beginning. So we have developed for space an hyperspectral camera. So the first idea and the request from ESA was really, is it possible to follow the re-entry, an object re-entry in the atmosphere, identifying the trajectory, and during this re-entry, analyzing the consumption, the combustion of this system by an hyperspectral imaging systems. And the basic question was, what kind of pollution we may have on Earth, and what will be the touch point on Earth. And according to this basic development, I say basic because it was, well, what we are calling the general study program. So it's very, very premature technology. We started from that, and we have created a hyperspectral camera dedicated to biology and medical applications. And today, but it takes 10 years between this first development of ESA up to a very first prototypes we are starting to sell in the different companies.
Okay, quick second question then for me again. So you said that you have this modular design, and you said that you're looking to transferring technology from different sectors. Does it happen sometimes that you have different customers, I mean, in the space and in the other industries who have similar requests, and then you basically, from the design, you're designing something that could work in both industries, or is it always one that's then sent to another one? Could a new space company now come and say, okay, I'm going to build one product and I'm going to try to sell it to space customers and also to another customer on Earth? Or you need to be two different ones?
Well, it may happen. Honestly, we had not yet encountered this kind of opportunity. But why not? If we are designing a system, for instance, there is different platforms that can be used for microgravity. You mentioned platforms on board glider, but we have also new platforms on board the ISS. It's a SES, for instance, with a what's the name of this platform? IceCube, exactly, thank you for that. But clearly, well, their approach is finally to try to have a kind of hosting platform, and we may think to have basic brick that can be used on a space grade plug on this kind of platform and also use on ground just to make experiment. I don't know if you had such kind of approach in mind, but this might be an opportunity to have the same development using twice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we can, another round of applause. And it's time to go to Julien Tallineau, who is the CEO of Veoware Space. He'll tell us how to pronounce it. He's the founder and so CEO of Veoware Space. Julien is an entrepreneur, an engineer, and a business developer with experience in successfully structuring new businesses, validating customer need, and offering satellite platform and equipment products and services on international markets. He is a civil engineering background with a specialization in aerospace engineering from the University of Liège, and we're happy to have him today. Thank you, Julien.
All right, welcome everybody. So I am Julien. I'd like to thank everybody here, Thierry, Mohammad for the introduction, Dominique as well. Thank you for organizing the event together with Sabri, which we haven't heard a lot, but he's here. Thanks for the first two chats. So thanks Walter, and thanks Olivier for the introducing the economy and Lambda-x vision for the new space economy. So I am Julien, I'm 33 years old, and I am the founder of Veoware Space. At Veoware Space, we manufacture satellite equipment technology. So we manufacture hardware. We actually have, for the people who are here, we have one hardware model here on the table with one of my colleague, Maud. Maud, please wave. Excellent, thank you, Maud. You're the best. Okay, so Veoware is a startup. We registered the company in 2018, and since then we got quite some interesting success. We've been supported by IMEC. They are actually an investor of ours. IMEC is a huge research center, and they have one fund specifically taking equity, in the same way Walter Peeters explained it. Taking equity into your company, investing into your ideas. We got European Commission funding. We're working with ESA. And we have been privileged enough to be accelerated by a venture capital firm in London called Seraphim Capital. They have actually invested a couple of times also in Europe to buy equity, buy shares into space companies. So let's go a little bit further. Let's see if it works. Yes, so this is the team, Julien and Julien. These are the two founders. I'm the top guy, and Julien is my best buddy. He's we're both together from University of Liège. That's where we met, and we decided that the world was not complex enough, so we wanted to create a new piece of technology together once one of the other would have a good idea. So we got that idea at about 2015, and it took us yet another 5 years to bring it to existence. But before that, about Newspace, I think I will be building on the others' message. Welcome to the age of constellations. I think it has been mentioned multiple times, and once the slide will arrive, we have been seeing in the past the building big, building huge, building expensive, and now I would like to welcome everybody listening to us tonight to the age of constellations, where you can manufacture satellite in batch, you can launch, or you can expect to launch every single month of the year. You have parts and units which are mass produced. This is where Veoware exactly is. And processes are industrialized, things are getting more straight-lined, and this is also a world where failure is okay, like Walter Peeters said. So just to give pictures, in case you haven't yet got the point, before it was big with, for instance, here, Luxembourg company, SES, which is operating geostationary satellites, more than 2 tons each. And now we have the emergence of Starlink, which instead of building one big telecommunication satellite, is able to mass produce 60 identical satellites. Pretty cool. And these are not CubeSats. These are not shoe boxes. They are stacks of 200-kilogram satellites. Actually, one Belgian person is actually working at Starlink. He was working at Kinetic Space before, and so it's also possible for Belgian people to go and work at SpaceX. It was quite astonishing because the selection process is really difficult, but it is possible. So this said, the big SpaceX and the big SES are certainly one big company of those words, but it's also accessible for startups, being able to produce satellites, pieces, parts. Here, for instance, I met this guy, Emiliano. Emiliano is Argentinian, and in 2010, he founded Satellogic, which is an Argentinian company before, and they had the ambition to bring Earth observation also with a small satellite constellation, kind of washing machine kind of size of satellites. And this is what they achieved today. So let's see if the video is working. You see a slowly moving video of their clean room. Well, you haven't seen it, but basically you see 11 satellites in his clean room now that we are 10 years later. So he started below his 30, so that's definitely possible. But this is Argentina, so you're going to tell me, yeah, am I really going to Argentina? No, the answer is no, because even in Belgium, as you can see here, we have the luck to have other entrepreneurs launching their business. I'll be actually quite proud to be next to my friend here, Guerric, who you're going to hear a little bit after from ScanWorld, bringing hyperspectral geospatial intelligence. And Aerospace Lab, who intervened actually yesterday. So Benoit, also from Belgium, raised and born, or born and raised actually, and created in 2017. So this is the world where you have massive amount of pods, volume, and satellites, but where do we fit as Veoware? So Veoware wants to be able to supply everybody with what they need. So parts and units. You don't build satellites out of nothing, right? And since we believe this is the golden age of space, there must be people providing shovels to dig the gold, and that's us. So our company has a little bit of a story, so I'll just introduce that to you guys. As you know, every day, specifically for Earth observation, people use data to make decisions. Interestingly enough, satellites have become quite important in the chain of collecting data, taking pictures. So daily, satellites are required to take a lot of pictures of the planet. And the current approach is that, interestingly enough, 99% of satellites, basically they collect data in a single one direction. They just look down. They don't rotate at all. They don't look left. They don't look right. And we believe this is really inefficient. So we decided that this was a problem. We validated this with customers, that they would like to take more pictures because there's a lot of things important to see. Should it be deforestation? Should it be even things in the hyperspectral domain? Isn't it, Guerric? Yeah, you can confirm.
Yes.
Guerric is a potential customer. Thank you, Guerric. And basically, this is a problem because there's no technology at this moment for small satellites to rotate and do whatever they can to collect pictures. So interestingly, the solution we brought is agility. So we developed a piece of technology that allows satellites to rotate. It sounds simple, but in space, things that rotate is actually quite complex because if it breaks, you can't repair it. So without waiting any further, I'd like to see the slides of our product coming here on the slides. So our technology is not only innovative, it is 10 times more performant than what is currently existing on the market to rotate satellites, to help them looking everywhere where they need to look at. And as an entrepreneur, obviously, we wanted to secure that. So we put a patent on the very first world network of actuators. We decided that actuators shouldn't go alone, and therefore, with the single building block, a standard building block, you can serve everybody in thousands. So we don't make custom. We don't like custom. We believe custom is old space. We want standard. We want modular. I think, Olivier, you mentioned modular. That was important. So I was quite happy when you said that. And we put a patent on this first network of actuators to rotate satellites, should there be 50 kilogram satellites or 300 kilogram satellites. So our technology, as I say, is applicable to mostly all the verticals of space. That's also an element of new space, is that you don't want to do custom. You don't want to redevelop a new piece of tech for satellites, for launchers, and then for cargo vehicles, or for Elon Musk, a new big F rocket that goes to Mars. We have made it so that it can apply to everything without modifying it. So we help satellites rotate, that I said. We help launchers, the upper stage, so they can stabilize, save some fuel, and not spend precious fuel to actually do the attitude control. Also applicable to cargo vehicles, same idea, to stabilize their attitude, be able to turn and rotate, and later eventually doing in-orbit servicing, because you every time need to rotate and turn in space. So I wanted to be short by design, and specifically wanted to recall everybody that we are currently hiring. So I would invite everybody that is listening to us, that is coming to an end of master, or even looking for an internship, a thesis. We are extremely eager to welcome you at our company. We're 9 people, extremely motivated. So scan our QR code or send us an email at jobs@veoware.space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julien. It was very interesting to see your product. So if you have any questions, because he was nice enough to leave time for everyone to ask questions, should we give you the...
Yeah, it seems like a very nice company. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question. On the slide, it said patent pending. Does it mean that it's still in progress, getting a patent?
Yeah, very, very good idea. So when you have a great idea, you write an elaborated amount of sentence that are extremely complex for engineers even to understand. You usually go to the patent attorney to write it for you, but then you submit that patent for approval, for review by your peers, basically. It takes some time, usually a year, so that they come back to you and they say, this clause, this and this is actually not new, but this and this and this is extremely new, and it's patentable. And as the process is going and you iterate on the way to formulate your patent, they basically, you are protected. By the moment you file your first one, you're protected. No, basically you have you would be able to claim, if somebody would do the same and file that later, you'd have the right to claim that you were first, which is eventually for a startup not so big of an advantage, because if Airbus is doing it, I mean, we're going to be crushed. I mean, they're going to send their best lawyers, and I'm not a lawyer myself. So. But anyway, for investors, that's very comforting that you did your work, you did your homework. You went out there and you show that from a legal perspective, you understand what's critical and what's not. Once everybody agrees that your patent is patentable, that every clause is actually good, then you put a certain amount of euro on the table and you file the definite patent. And then it's known by everybody. Actually, ours will, maybe I should not say that. It will be available publicly in about 5 months now. So we have 5 months to be the best on the market, better than Airbus and others.
After this, how does a patent for space work? Is it only within like Europe, or is it in the whole world?
Yeah. We thought like universe, like even if ET wants to do it, no, I'm kidding. No, it's like any patent. So usually we file in Belgium. Actually, we discovered that Belgium is pretty good at filing patent. And the more you put money on the table, the more you can cover countries. Yeah, so that's where the startups are limited at some point. You would prefer to pay your employees an extra month rather than covering your patent in North Korea, for instance.
So there's a technical question on the chat from Raja. So, I mean, your resume says that you're also a lecturer at ISU, so let's test that. The question says, I want to know the main role of actuator in the satellite concept. So what would this be exactly used for?
Okay, so let's go technical. A satellite is just like a dead body. It flies at 7 kilometers per second. To rotate, to be able to point an actual payload to, let's say, Belgium, when it's flying over, the satellite can point Brussels or can point Mons or Liège, and that's a different direction, right? So the satellite needs to rotate, and to rotate on Earth, at least, we're usually pushing on something like action and reaction. In space, you can push on nothing. So the only way to rotate in space is to exchange something we call angular momentum. So an actuator is something that is storing angular momentum and releases it when we ask it to release it. And when it releases angular momentum, the satellite starts rotating. If we release angular momentum to, let's say, the left, satellite will move to the right. It's action and reaction. The satellite literally acquires angular momentum to compensate, to conserve energy. And the role of actuators is to precisely, and that's where it is very difficult, is to do it precisely, to exchange this rotation energy according to what is required to have a stable and accurate pointing.
Thank you very much. I have also a question. So you mentioned satellites of about 50 kilos, and we see that more and more satellites that are smaller than that appear on the market. What is the smallest size of a satellite in terms of room available, but also in terms of power that can use your system?
Good question. The satellites comes in every kind of colors and shape. So, and even the small ones may not need to turn very fast. To best answer your question, I would say that size of a microwave, so if you have the size of a microwave, could actually already have our actuators if they need to cover an extremely amount of rotations. Like if you need to take snapshots, almost like you were in Los Angeles collecting pictures of all the stars on the street, you need to take a picture, rotate, take a picture, rotate, take a picture, rotate. That, our actuators can enable that. If you don't need that rate of rotations, our actuators can do it, but the fact of having that volume, and again, I would invite to Maud to show the modules on camera, maybe. Maud, thank you. Yeah, so that's the module. So you see a kind of microwave size. This would take already some part of that microwave. So only if you have a high need for agility, you would go for this solution. In case you need to rotate less fast, you only take the inner part of our actuators, which is also a product that will come to market eventually. But the typical size, washing machine.
Thank you.
Yeah, we still have a few minutes. So I wanted to go back to the business side and the entrepreneurship side. What can you tell about the main challenges that you had in your journey? And I'm mainly interested in, because you said your co-founder was your best friend or a very good friend. How did that go and did that work out?
Okay. So we basically argue every week of the year because we are both the engineers. And he is the CTO, I'm the CEO. So I take the finance and commercial aspects, which I'm coming in a minute. He covers all the technical parts. And as any CTO, Chief Technical Officer, he does not want to show the product. He said, yeah, it's not ready. Or I still want to add this. And I'm like, come on, man, it's there. I mean, it's there. I fought to bring this today, yeah. But on a commercial perspective, what is the most challenge is credibility. Yeah, you go out there and you have people that be, okay, what have you done? What do you have? You have a prototype? Okay, does it work? Okay, is it in space? No, because it still costs a lot of money to send even a piece like that in space. So we were actually interviewing somebody 2 hours ago with Maud, and that person made a very nice statement. He said, "You're not a space company until you put something in space." And that's very frustrating for an entrepreneur, because the only thing you want to do is put it in space, but nobody believes that it will survive. So a big challenge is to get the money, get the credibility, or / the funding to put something out there. Or in microgravity, sometimes that's sufficient, actually.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much for the presentation. So I would like to ask you, because of all this turning around, is going to be consumed more fuel than before? And if yes, what is the decrease in the lifetime of the satellite? What is the trade-off between the fuel that is consumed and the lifetime that is decreased or remained for the small satellites?
May I just ask the trade-off between lifetime and?
And the
fuel. Okay, so here's how it goes. At the moment, the kick stage of one company, for instance, Rocket Lab, if you heard about them, the kick stage is the last stage of launchers. They are either keeping a payload attached, and then they make sure that you reach the right orbit, and they almost operate you, and they have some fuel for maintaining the orbit, and they have actuators to maintain the, let's say, the attitude. If the actuators are not enough, so they're not powerful enough, they don't give enough torque, they use fuel. So every time that the payload requires to turn quickly, they would use extra fuel, like little fart, basically, to turn that kick stage. We can save that. But I would have a very difficult time to explain how many farts the kick stage would need to do, depending on the payload. But that's where the use case is. And some payloads, they don't need that. Some payloads, they're just very happy to look down.
Yeah, maybe because it's going to be a problem for the lifetime of the satellite, because for the small satellites, it's like 1, 2, 3, 5 years maximum. So if we decrease the fuel, that's a challenge, I think, an extra challenge of this technology.
Okay, well, if you want, we can take this question offline. We can take a sheet of paper and we do trade-offs. Cool, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Julien. So there are a few questions in the Q&A on Zoom. So if you want, you can have a look at them and maybe type your answer. And if we have time at the end, we'll come back to them. But feel free to answer them already. So thank you, Sam, Cyrine, and Christophe for the questions. We'll make sure that we answer them either in the chat or at the end of the discussion. So we're going to the next speaker now, Nicolas Helssen. He's a Business Application Ambassador. So Nicolas is currently focusing on promoting ESA Space Solutions Program and supporting potential candidates through a successful application process with ESA and Belspo. He previously worked at the European Centre for Space Application and Telecommunications in UK as an economic researcher. So he's really another example of someone switching from another field to space and who is much happier now. So thank you very much, Nicolas.
Thank you, Mohammad. Yeah, I'm just waiting for my slides. So what I want to speak to you about today is basically how to become the next space entrepreneur. And to do this, I want to talk a little bit about ESA Space Solutions Belgium and what we do and how we can help you as a student or as a young entrepreneur. So what Space Solutions Belgium really is a specialized network, an incubation and business network focusing on space technologies. And what we try to do
is target innovative industries and entrepreneurs. So this means that you can be from a non-space market and try to offer you the most suitable funding support tool that might fit your needs. Now, this is a mouthful, but basically what this means is that we try to be the one-stop shop if you are a young entrepreneur or even an established SME, to try and see how you could develop space applications, be it Newspace, but be it satellite-derived applications, and how you can find the best amount of funding, be it at a regional, at a federal, at an ESA level with the Commission, and to help you basically get to that point where you can start your business. And so most of the meetings that we have do not look like this, like a board of directors room, because some people might have a little bit of an entry-level barrier speaking either to ESA or the Commission. But what we try to have is young teams who look more like this that are working with us. Now, this is one of our teams from the Copernicus Incubation program. Now, you see that these are teams of young people, of old people, and it's not that scary, let's say. So what I want to go through now is there's many different programs and applications that you can apply to. But the question might be, out of all of these, what is right for you? Because there might be a plethora of funding tools, of schemes, but how can you understand which one to go for? Can you do multiple ones at the same time? Do you have to do them in sequence, et cetera, et cetera? And so what we try to do is at Space Solutions Belgium to basically help you find the right one based on what you require. And so what I want to go through now is a little bit what the journey could look like to becoming a space entrepreneur. One of the programs that we were running as well was Astropreneurs. And so this is a tool, this is the really early stage tool. So I'm going to start from early to more established, let's say. So this is something that you could basically go to even if you were a student or a young professional. You could do this without even having a company, and you would get mentoring from space experts. So you would apply. I had two students, I think, who wanted to investigate how they could use the technology that unfurls satellite in space to basically implement it to do a small football field on Earth. So to use space technology to do basically mini foot fields. So as you can see, it really goes in all different industries and directions. So these ideas, there's not one idea that's too crazy. If you want to talk to a mentor and basically talk about the idea or the solution that you want to develop, this is a tool that you can use as well. So there were 100 mentors available. We had 500 different applicants across Europe. And now we are also still doing some trainings and webinars for early stage entrepreneurs. And what's also interesting is that with all the information that was gathered, we're creating a European-wide space database, which this is a small prototype, where basically you could have access to all of the different events, the different funding programs, but this is European-wide, so it's also an interesting tool to have a look at. If you want to go a little bit further, what we've also done last year, now we haven't done it this year due to COVID, is basically to explore your ideas at hackathons. So if you're a team of students or of interested people that want to know a little bit more about space, this is one that we held last December. And so at these hackathons, you could basically tackle interesting challenges using, in this case, Earth observation imagery from Copernicus. You get to know and you can network a little bit with the space ecosystem. Again, you can receive mentoring from experts. And here you can also win cash prizes, which is always nice. And of course, get introduced to follow-on programs, which can help you further if you want to take that idea, if you want a prize, and see how you could basically incubate it further on. Which brings me to the next tool that might be of use, which is a business incubation center. Now, Julien already knows a little bit about this. So if you basically want to start your company, the ESA Big Belgium, and I think Walter spoke a little bit about this as well, this is where you can apply and really look at how you can develop a space product and get funding for it. So if you're a company or if you're a team less than 5 years old, you can receive up to 50,000 euros and 80 hours of technical support. We usually do this with regional partners. This used to be IMEC, as Veoware had. But this is really the first stage where you can get money, an incentive from ESA and from your region. So it depends if you're in Flanders or Wallonia, to basically develop your product and get funding for all of these aspects. And these are some of the companies. Of course, Veoware is one of those today here. But so just goes to show that it's a nice tool for startups to basically get started. And we have a deadline actually coming up on the 31st of October. So this is, you know, if you were interested or had a team ready to go. Now, one of the things about the ESA BIC is that the ESA BIC covers the expenses of your product, but not your employees. So of course, if you can't pay yourself, it's a little bit difficult. So what happens here is there are other tools at the commission or otherwise that you can use to latch on to existing incubation programs. And the Copernicus incubation program is one of them. So the Copernicus incubation program requires you to already be incubated. It is not an incubation program itself. What it does is it's basically going to offer you extra money to further develop your service within the incubation center that you have. So here, I mean, the process is to submit a video about what you do, perform a live pitch to a panel of experts, which are remote sensing experts, but equally investors. And then you get an extra 50,000 euros, for instance, on top of your ESA BIC, because I think half of the ones in the Copernicus incubation actually come from an ESA BIC, but then they can pay themselves with the 50,000 euros, which is quite interesting. But of course, if you don't know that these tools can coexist, it's quite difficult. And of course, you gain visibility and credibility. And this is a way where Space Solutions is trying to bring the ESA programs and the commission programs a little bit together. And here also we have the next selection round, which is actually next week or the end of the week after, on the 23rd of October. Now, this, for instance, is remote sensing, but there are other programs such as the Point IoT program, which is also one of the programs we cover, which is focused on IoT and Galileo. So, I mean, there are different aspects of space that can be used. Veoware is a space technology company that was in the ESA BIC, but there's also other companies using space, which we see as space companies. Like you said, some people don't say you're a space company, right? But there are other companies who utilize satellite-based assets, and we still consider them space companies. And so here in Point IoT, if you're trying to develop a Galileo-enabled solution, we basically organized a boot camp not long ago and another one that will follow next year. And we have a 3-month mentoring sprint program to basically help you boost your way to your solution. And so you again have 80 hours of technical and business assistance, design assistance even. And then you can get 20,000 euros of prize money basically after the program ends when you pitch to investors. So it's another tool. It's quite an easy tool to get into, which allows you to receive funding for your space-based application. And we have a new application round, which will also be at the beginning of next year. And so after all of this, there's, again, at ESA, a program called the ESA Business Applications, which is the main program that I work for. And here, once you've completed your ESA BIC, it's not, you know, it doesn't stop there, but you're able to boost your business even further through feasibility studies and demonstration projects at ESA, which are really focused on commercial applications, commercial space businesses. So here, the prizes go a little bit higher. Part of this is also co-funded, so we do require you to have, in Belgium, at least 50% of the money. But the amounts go quite up. And again, our role is to bring you into these programs and to lower that entry barrier, because if you just go on the ESA website to their tendering system and download all the tender documents, you won't do this anymore, I guarantee it. So what we're trying to do is to show you an easier way of getting into it, of getting your funding approval, so that basically you know what's coming. And here are some examples, for instance, of the themes that we organize under business applications. And as you can see, it's quite varied. There's about, preventing and detecting food and beverage fraud. So you might think, what does that have to do with space, right? But the thing is, any technology, and this is what Olivier was talking about, technology transfer, if you can devise a way to use a space technology that could help somehow, be it by a laser technology, to detect food and beverage inconsistencies, then this is something that you might get funding for, because it's a technology transfer of bringing something to a non-space market. And so all of this, the point of showing all of this is to show that anybody can really become a space entrepreneur, and that the tools are there. And our goal is basically to help you a little bit through the programs, at least that we know, to make your lives easier. And so how to get in touch, you can go to spacesolutions.be. All of the programs that I explained are on there and some. You can send me a mail as well, or send me a WhatsApp or a call. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nicolas, for highlighting all those amazing tools that we have, and we're lucky to have in Belgium and Europe to kickstart a project in the space. So look at the questions. So we have a first question asking, what is the background of these mentors? I guess this was about the Astropreneur program. And are they specific to a specific industry, or is it general?
So it's a little bit of everyone. So if it's about Astropreneurs, I mean, the hundreds of mentors that we had were mentors who were really focused on technical stuff, so real engineers, but a lot of them were also business and design, because the term Astropreneur is about entrepreneurship. So it's also about the commercial aspects of doing business, but also a little bit about design. So this might be people that don't know much about space per se, but do know something about creating products. And design plays a big part in this as well. And so this is why Verhaert, the company that is managing ESA Space Solutions, it's actually a product design company. So it used to be a space company before it split off, but it's a product design company. And so this is why they have the tools also to bring these products to the market.
Thank you. Do we have a question there?
Yes, thanks. Quite interesting, and I'm sure that you are quite useful at taking the candidates through the various websites where there are programs in offer. But what I hear from you is European Commission money or EU money, ESA money. This doesn't sound very new space. This is public money. How do you relate with the private investors that we've heard quite present on the scene?
So it's true, and for a big while, either the ESA BIC, which was usually about bringing a technology to non-space, but this is not what Veoware does, and they were also in an ESA BIC. This has been shifting a little bit. So and even in the business applications program, which used to be a real downstream space application program for satellite-derived services and applications, they're also focusing a bit more on integrating more either spaceflight technology or the same thing that Veoware does, and financing those as well. But the mechanisms there aren't always adapted. And so, for instance, business applications is working with Seraphim Capital, through which Veoware received financing as well. But it's true that here the funding programs that work under ESA Space Solutions Belgium are directed at the public programs. It's true that it's not a program that is focused on bringing in the private investors or equity. So through the programs, for instance, the Point IoT, we do try to bring investors at the end of the program in a pitching session. In a Copernicus incubation program, we hire private investors at the end also for the pitching sessions. So we try to incorporate them like this, but this is by nature of our focus in how to bring these private investors in the implementation of a program that was already designed by the Commission or ESA. So they design the program in a certain way, and at the end we do try to bring in the private equity, but it's true that it's not at the core aspect of these programs.
Just by experience, no investor usually understand what you do when you're in space. So they look at your financial plan, and if you can actually give the credential and the credibility of having been accelerated or incubated, you gain 30 seconds more of their time, which is a huge amount of value. So from experience, we would not be able to raise any single euro without them.
Thank you for the question.
Yes, you already partially answered the question that I had, which is, can you also be an entrepreneur in this era if you're not an engineer for space? But do you have maybe a couple examples of entrepreneurs that developed a product, like a design product that you talked about, just to broaden my perspective of what is possible in that area?
Yes, you can actually, because if you go through certain of these programs, you can always prime your own company, but bring in either subcontractors, you know, different companies who might be able to build what you're trying to build, and will finance them also through you. So if you, let's say that you want to kickstart your own application, but you don't know how to design or build a product, you can be in the lead of a project and receive the minor amount of funding. So it could be possible that you're just somebody who's bringing a team together. Of course, if you're trying to design a product for space, you will need some technical knowledge, but you can subcontract these to other people. So if you're a good people manager and can bring these companies together, there's nothing stopping you from coming to our door, explaining what you want to do, to show that you already have at least a semblance of a partnership with somebody who could build it. And then if it makes sense, that you could be financed to basically build it with partners. So there is a way to do it, yes.
Thank you. Maybe, so I'm going to check if there's another question in the Q&A. So I have another question, because I assume that you've been following a lot of projects and you've seen a lot of them fail maybe. So what are the criteria that you think, based on your experience, makes a team successful or less successful, let's say?
Well, it's funny because the ESA Business Applications program did actually a study to see who were the ones that failed a lot. And the interesting thing was the program itself is not like most other programs in that it's technology push, you know, or technology oriented businesses, but it's a user driven program, which means that we noticed in the KPIs that those who were able to actually show letters of interest from either users or stakeholders who were good networkers were the ones who usually also made it at the end at an operational stage with users, because in their feasibility study or in their demonstration projects, the program that they were running, they were already including users, they were already including customers, they were organizing user workshops or stakeholder workshops. And those are the guys that usually made it through to the end and had commercial businesses, or at least the ones that didn't stay in the freezer. So I think that's really one of the key things is, you know, you're trying to build a business and you need to understand your customers. So the ones that have customers from the beginning, or at least focus a lot on that, that's a good tip for the programs that we have here.
Thank you very much. Very interesting insight. So if we don't have, again, if you have other questions, we'll come back to a short Q&A session at the end of all the presentation. So now I guess it's time, last but not least, we are happy to have Guerric with us. I'm gonna try to put his presentation on. Sorry. So Guerric holds a PhD in aerospace engineering from the University of Queensland in Australia. And before that, he also obtained degrees from the Louvain School of Engineering, the Von Karman Institute, and the International Space University. And after working for different aerospace companies, he now dedicates his time to a new challenge in the field of Earth observation as General Manager of ScanWorld. And I'm personally very interested in the title of this presentation, which is the best of both worlds, mature technologies and new business models. So thank you, Guerric.
Thank you, Mo. Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna just copy paste what Julien said. Thank you, everyone. It was, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for attending. It's fantastic to have all of you here. I'm very happy to be able to speak. The title completely changed, so it's not the best of both worlds. Now I'm gonna make. We've heard a lot about what about Newspace, what about making business in space, etc., etc. I'm gonna give you my own little version of what it is to be an entrepreneur in space. And I'm gonna give you a guide, a recipe in 3 steps on how to create your business. And it's a space data business. So it's not the same as what Julien does. In this case, we're not making a system to put on a satellite. We're using space data or generating space data. Step 1. First of all, you need to find a problem to solve. And that's actually something that we've heard a lot now. It has to be user-driven, right? So don't push a technology. Don't just make something because you think it's cool. Make something because it solves a problem. And here I'm stealing a Japanese concept, which some of you may have heard of, which is called ikigai. If you go see some kind of a mentor for job orientation, they will push you towards finding your own ikigai, right? Ikigai is just the intersection between what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what you can be paid for. It's just a combination of the 4. Now I'm gonna steal that concept, and I think actually you can apply it as such to finding a problem to solve to create your own space business. And let's start with the beginning, what you love. That's the easiest. I think that all the people attending online and all the people live in this room all love exactly the same thing. We are all excited by rockets and spaceships. So, okay, that's a done deal. What we love is space, right? Okay, good. We're gonna do something with satellites and rockets and whatever. What we're good at, that's when it comes to making your company, it's you, but it's not only you. It's you and your ecosystem, you and your network, the people you know, where you studied, that kind of stuff. If we look at Belgium specifically, for those of you who are online who are not in Belgium, I'm sorry, but for those of you who are in Belgium, effectively, actually Belgium has a pretty good history about Earth observation. And it's kind of funny that yesterday Aerospace Lab was there, today we had Veoware, and me for ScanWorld. Actually, all the 3 of us, we have a business for Earth observation satellites. And I think we are more or less the same age, and we studied more or less at the same university, and we all went to do a YGT at ESA. Did you go to ESA too? Yes, no? ISU? Yeah, ISU, voilà. So basically, it's not, so it's you and your personal ecosystem. Belgium has done a lot in Earth observation, and I think our universities are very good at it, and we have a couple of companies that are very good at it. It's no surprise that we actually end up having startups that do business around Earth observation. So that's for what we're good at. What you can be paid for is very often overlooked by engineers because we do something that we've heard a lot this evening is technology push. We do things because they are cool, and then we think about how we can be paid for it. But first, of course, think about who's going to pay for it. Who's going to pay for it? It's a business. You need to make money, otherwise it won't work. And last but not least, what the world needs, and sadly speaking, good for business, but sadly speaking, plenty of choice there. The world is in a very bad shape. Climate change, population migration, food security, anything, plenty of problems to be solved, which is a good thing. It's a bad thing for the world, it's bad news for the world, but the good thing is that we are there and we can make a change about it. I think that we are maybe one of the first generation where we can actually make business that has really a purpose. Now we start to, actually, you see more and more companies that are making money through carbon sequestration. How amazing is that? 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, it would be completely impossible. But now you can be paid while sequestering carbon. It's fantastic when you think about it. So, okay, good. Find your ikigai for space, right? This step 2, so that's step 1. Step 2, it's, and that's actually what Walter already said, find the right data set to solve your problem, right? And there is plenty of data. We have already heard about it. Plenty of data. Copernicus, so with the Sentinel satellites from the European Commission, Copernicus program, tens of terabytes. I'm going to repeat, tens of terabytes of data for free. It's completely free. You can just go there and pick it, right? And it's an incredibly diverse set of data. So here you got an example. On the left, it's a radar image of Brussels, that's Sentinel-1. In the middle, it's a multispectral image of wildfires in Siberia, Sentinel-2, another set of satellites. And on the right-hand side, it's atmospheric NO2 from Sentinel-5. Plenty of data, diversity of data, it's perfect. So plenty of businesses are actually rising up through Copernicus data. And actually, it's not for nothing that there is also a Copernicus incubation program. It's because you can do a lot with these data. So first step, that's the easiest. If you find something to do, that's the easy way to go. Then the barrier to entry is really low, of course. You depend on something that is free, whatever you do, some other people could do it quite easily, but okay. If you don't find what makes you happy with the free data, there is not tens of terabytes, but over hundreds of terabytes every single day in commercial space data. And that can be, again, radar imagery, multispectral, high resolution, high temporal revisits, AIS data, so the signals from ships, anything. Plenty of companies delivering plenty of data. And the good news is they're just waiting for one thing. They're waiting for you to use the data and make a business out of it. So please go ahead and make it. So that's the best approach, easiest. Find the right data to solve the problem you've identified. If you haven't found the right data sets, the slide is going to come in a minute. If you haven't found the right data sets, just make your own data. And the good news is now it has become incredibly easy. It's still very hard, but it's much easier than a couple of years ago. What do you need to do to have your own data? First step, buy yourself a satellite. Don't go ahead and make a satellite. It would be a waste of your time. Just buy a satellite. Only in Europe, you have more than 30 suppliers of satellites in all shapes and colors, right? Big ones, small ones, cheap ones, expensive ones. You just pick the ones that corresponds to what you need. You send a request for quotes. They design your satellite. You buy it. You put it in space, right? Put it in space, book a launch, okay? SpaceX, with the rideshare program, it's $1 million to send 200 kilos in space. That's like, that's dead cheap. When I started my career, and I'm only 32, so it was not a very long time ago, the absolute cheapest you could get to go in space was $30,000 per kilo. Now we're speaking about $5,000 per kilo. It has been divided by 6 in only 10 years. How amazing is that, right? It's cheap. It's really genuinely extremely cheap. You're in space, you still need to get the data on the ground. Don't go ahead and make ground stations all over the world and buy antennas, etc. You don't need to do that, right? You just pick a ground service, ground station service provider. And these are not like obscure people that do that. It's big names. It's Amazon Web Services. It's KSAT in Norway in collaboration with Microsoft. So it's these companies, what they will do is they will interact with your satellite. You don't need to worry about anything. They will interact with your satellite. They will put all your data on the cloud and you can play with your data through an API or whatever you like. It's so easy, right? So it's in space, download the data, use the data, solve your problem. Step 3, and that's also something that Nicolas said, the ones that are successful are the one, I'm speaking a lot about being successful and everything. We just launched our company in June, so we are not that successful yet, but hopefully we'll get there. That's just a little disclaimer. But step 3 is confront your ideas with the market. And basically that's just to show a little bit the difference between the US approach and what has been for a long time the European approach, and is luckily changing. In Europe, what we used to do is we have a very complicated Gantt chart. It's full of preliminary design review, critical design reviews, blah, 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 reviews, paper, and then we have a launcher, and hopefully it works. Fingers crossed, right? SpaceX had a completely different approach, starting with Falcon 1 engine. And then, okay, it works. We'll put 9 engines, Falcon 9. Okay, it works. We'll reuse the first stage. Perfect. Everyone is happy. Still works? Okay, we're just gonna strap 3 next to each other. It works? Okay, let's make a very big rocket. Right? But that's an incremental approach that is extremely interesting. And within that family, the Falcon Heavy, they're not really using it anymore, right? They've had a couple of launches, maybe 2 or even only 1, I don't know. They tried, okay, cool, it's not a good product anymore. We're not gonna push the Falcon Heavy just to be happy, okay? We don't need it, we don't need it. Falcon 1, it was just to prove that they could go in space. Okay, it's done, we simply forget about it. That was really the skateboard to their sports car at the very end, right? And it's actually, the little image is not from me, and I haven't put the credits, so I hope that that presentation is not going very far, because that's a copyright infringement, but okay. On the left-hand side, they end up with a nice Volkswagen, right? It works, it's fine, it's robust. But what you really want is something sexy and exciting, right? And that's what you have on the right-hand side. I think the illustration is particularly relevant for our case. So a little case study about these 3 steps with what we do here at ScanWorld. First of all, finding a problem to solve. I already talked a little bit about what we love, what we're good at, and what we can be paid for. I haven't mentioned that, but okay. Now I'm going to focus on what the world needs. And basically what we looked at is the problem of agriculture. Agriculture is, it's actually the origin, one of the major origins of climate change. 30% of greenhouse gases emissions can be linked to food systems. It's huge, it's 1/3. I'm a big fan of aviation bashing, but actually agriculture is much bigger than anything. Food systems in general are a huge contributor to climate change. But agriculture is also a victim, right? We are foreseeing that yields are going to decrease on average by 10% by 2050 because of climate change. And actually, that's going to have 10% on average, but the biggest impact will be, of course, in areas where they need food the most. So that's a huge problem. Agriculture is also the solution, right? Right now, in most Western countries, the soil, the agricultural land is actually completely barren. There is no life in it, right? So they need to put minerals and minerals and minerals and fertilizers and fertilizers. Now, more and more people are transitioning to agroecology. That's a huge movement where the goal is actually to make the soil alive again. And through that process, you could capture 1 trillion tons of CO2 within the soil. And that would solve, in part, but a very big part, climate change. Mitigate, not solve. And so that's agriculture and climate change. And in the meantime, the issue is that the population is growing and people are changing their food habits. And by 2050, we know that we will need 60% more food. 60, it's huge. So we need to make even a bigger effort than what we've done already up to now. Deforestation, again, up to 3/4 of deforestation is linked to food production. Last but not least, food security, major issue. Actually, it's an issue so big that the Nobel Prize was awarded to the, I don't remember the exact name of the organization, but it's the UN organization working on food security, the Nobel Peace Prize of this year, because it's a major issue. Okay, that's a problem we want to solve. How will we solve it? Find the right data set to do it, right? And my explanation here is going to come in 2 steps. First, I need to explain a little bit what is hyperspectral data. What we do is hyperspectral imagery, because we know that that can strongly support the resolution of all the issues we've identified in agriculture. What is hyperspectral imagery? Starting on the left-hand side, that's a picture of Jean Blou here in Belgium. Big agricultural land. You don't see it really well here on the screen, but basically for each of the pixels, what you're gonna do is you're not gonna just take red, green, and blue like you would have on a standard screen, but you're gonna take 200 different wavelengths, 200, 250, 150, doesn't matter, a lot of wavelengths, so that you don't have only a sampling of the spectrum, but you have the full spectrum. Right? So for each of the pixels, you have the full spectrum. Step 2, what you're gonna do is you're gonna compare for each of the pixels of your picture, the spectrum that you recorded with a library of spectrums, a database of spectrum that you have, right? There is a spectral signature for beetroot. There is a spectral signature for colza. There is a spectral signature for wheat, not weed, wheat, etc., etc. So what you're going to do is you're going to compare in it. There is also one for weed, actually, effectively, but okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to compare for each of the pixels the spectral signature that you have with your database of spectral signatures, and you're going to identify what's in the pixel. And because you know what's in the pixel, you can make, that's a very basic example. That's like hyperspectral imagery 101. You make a classification of the land. You identify each of the parcels. You know what are growing in the parcels, and you make a beautiful map. Okay, in this field, you have colza. In that field, you have wheat. In that field, in the middle of the field, hidden, you have weeds. No one knows about it, but you know because you've checked. And then the farmer is very happy. He knows what's going on. So that's really 101. But actually, you can push hyperspectral imagery much further than that. And these are coming, but what's coming is a couple of examples of use cases of what you can unlock and achieve with hyperspectral imagery. I'm gonna just mention one, which is really my absolute favorite. It's on the bottom left, yellow rust detection. Yellow rust is a disease that affects wheat and any kind of wheat. So even if you have GMO, the best GMO you can imagine, it doesn't matter. Yellow rust is going to adapt, and it's going to come back, and it's going to affect your plants. It's a disease, and what it means is that if your crops are affected, they are going to lose up to 40 to 50% in productivity. So you really, if your crops are sick, you really lose a lot of money, a lot of proteins, a lot of food. It's simple as that. How do they detect it today? Well, the farmer goes on the field and he just looks visually, he inspects, and he will see if there is a yellow spot, it could be yellow rust, and then he's going to treat the disease, which is highly inefficient. So first of all, the good news is you can do that from space. You don't need to go on the field anymore. You simply receive an update. Actually, it's all automated. The system tells you, okay, yellow rust is developing on that pixel in your field. Because we have the spectral signature, we know what's going on. But then the really beautiful thing is that you can detect it 2 to 3 days sooner with hyperspectral imagery as opposed to the human eye. The human eye only has 3 sensors, red, green, blue. Hyperspectral, 200 sensors. Because you have much more details, you see the diseases developing much, much sooner. And that means a huge save in terms of revenue for the farmer on the field. That's only one example of what you could do with hyperspectral imagery. And actually only that, when we discovered about it, when we had that use case, what I told the team is we should rename the company in Yellow Rust Satellite, or something like that. Because that case only justifies completely what we do. But then we can do much more. Carbon sequestration, fertilizers, water, yield quantity and quality, contamination, blah, blah, you name it. Plenty of things, plenty of insights we can deliver to the farmers on the field to optimize their operations. Bad news for us is there is no real hyperspectral imagery right now available from satellites. So what I told you in the beginning is that ideally you just use what's there. Well, okay, there is nothing there, so we're just gonna make our own data. And I'm not gonna go too much into details on that slide, but I'm gonna go straight to the next one. But basically, what we are doing is we are launching a small constellation of 9 satellites. So it's not mass production yet, like Julien would like, but it's a sizable production. It's better than nothing. So 9 satellites, and with these, we are going to have a revisit time of, for any point of the globe, we are going to have 2 images per week. And that's exactly what people in the farming business want with hyperspectral imagery. And then this is to show you how we stick to what I told you in the beginning. Right now we are on the very left-hand side. It's a skateboard, what we have. It's not much, but it's something. What we have is we have data sets. So we have plenty of data from aerial campaigns, from other satellites that are not as good as what we want to do, but okay, it's a good proxy, etc., etc. So we have some data that we use to play, and we make use cases, and we confront them to our customers, and we tell them, okay, is this something you would be interested in or not? Does it make a sense to implement that in your operations or not, etc., etc. That's our skateboard. As of next year, we are going to put a little steering mechanism on the skateboard, meaning that we are going to offer dedicated aerial campaigns. So what we are going to do is we are going to fly airplanes or drones equipped with hyperspectral cameras to do specific use cases with our customers. Plenty of these advantages as compared to satellites. First of all, it's crazy expensive. Secondly, it's not as flexible. You will not have 2 flights per week above your fields, right? Etc., etc. So it's not as good. It's not exactly what we want to do, but it's something. 2023, we launch our first satellites. We'll have 2 images per month of every point of the globe. That's a bicycle, sorry. 2025, first batch of 4 satellites. There we really have a bike. And 2026, second batch of 4 satellites, bi-weekly revisit time, and that's a sport car that we really want. And I'm gonna just take the opportunity, now that I'm on that slide, to answer the question of Sam at the very beginning of the session. What could local and regional and federal government do to support startups? And I think the answer of Walter was grants and subsidies. And definitely, I mean, who's going to say no to money? Will you say no to money? I wouldn't say no to money. So definitely, yes, of course. Grants and subsidies, etc. Money, 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 money. The more money we have, the happier we are. Definitely. But what would be even better is actually, why don't they buy products, right? Who's gonna buy that little shitty skateboard? No one, right? But I still want to sell it. So let have the government buy it from me. Why don't they buy me something like that, you know? And I see actually today we have plenty of sponsors. We have Wallonia, the Federal Public Service for Foreign Affairs, etc. All these instances, they could already purchase some minimum viable products that we have to offer. They should position themselves as anchor customers. Subsidies, definitely, but what is even better is selling a product. So instead of just giving me money to develop things, they should give me money in exchange for a service, which allows me to already build a little bit of something, you know? That's exactly what happened in the United States. I don't know the exact specifics, but SpaceX, I don't know the specifics, but they signed a contract for something like 10 launches, although they didn't have a launcher yet, from NOAA, NASA, the US Air Force, etc. So of course, that's simply because the government, US government, decided to position themselves as an anchor customer and say, okay, I may be completely wrong about it, but that's what I was told. So I think it's true. So voilà, so that's my little message. Now I'm gonna take any questions you may have. The battery of my laptop is flat, but if you want to send me questions, I would be very happy if you do, and it's quite simple. You can send them. I have a complicated name, so I made it simple. You can send any questions you have at bob@scanworld.be. So bob@scanworld.be. Voilà, I'm gonna take questions now.
Thank you very much, Guerric. We already have a question on the chat, and it's about the step 1. And the question is how you assess actually that there is someone who wants to pay for what you're offering at the very, very first step.
Well, you need to talk with people, of course. So we created in the specific case of ScanWorld, I mentioned that we created the company in June, but actually. So our main shareholder is SpaceTech, and actually the direct consequence of that is that the director of my board is sitting just there a little bit on the left. It's Thierry. So I hope I didn't say anything that the board doesn't agree with. But okay. But SpaceTech and actually the scientific community in Belgium at large and in the world has already a tremendous lot of experience with hyperspectral imagery. So a lot of use cases have already been identified. And in fact, the first thing we did is we tried to imagine what a product based on hyperspectral imagery could look like. And then we settled on agriculture, and we thought, okay, who's going to buy it? And I'm not going to go to the specifics of the business plan, but we identified a couple of companies that would be interested. And the next step was very simple. We went on the website of these companies. We looked at contacts at, I don't know which name of company.com. We sent an email and we said, look, we have something cool that we would like to talk to you about. Could we schedule a meeting? And what you will find is that in most of the cases, well, in some cases, not in most of the cases, but in, let's say, 1/4 of the cases, people will answer and be very enthusiastic about it. In 3/4 of the cases, you will be completely ignored, but 1/4 of the cases, they will be very enthusiastic about it, and they will spend time with you, helping you define your product. And that's exactly what we did. And we interacted with, I don't know, 10, 15 companies to define what we could do, what the product could look like, etc., etc. And that's your step one, actually. That's your step one. You need to bootstrap it, and you need to, yeah, go out there and confront your ideas with the outside, definitely.
Thank you. So that would be linked to the next question from Paul. So these companies that you're talking to, basically, who is really your market? Is it the individual farmers, the cooperatives, the governments? Did you go to talk to the farmers in Jean Blou, or was it more the big companies?
Hi, Paul. Paul is a former colleague of mine. So, voila, this explains a lot. So basically, no, it's a very good question. So in our specific case, for the imagery, the companies that we target are large agribusinesses. So now I'm going to go a little bit into the details of ScanWorld, but I think it's, I hope it's interesting for most of you. Basically, what is fascinating is that most of the big agribusinesses, so I'm talking about Bayer, BASF, Yara, companies like that, Kubota, John Deere, most of them have developed management tools for farmers. It's called Farm Management Information Systems, FMIS. And these are basically, for those of you who are already in the professional world, you should be hating SAP or Odoo or whatever software you're using. These are basically the SAP for farmers, right? And most of them, what they're doing now is they're adding a layer of digital agriculture on top of that. Basically, they use Sentinel imagery to just provide to the farmer a nice picture of the field and some very basic indicators. It doesn't cost much, it's nice, etc. But what they see is that they could do much more with hyperspectral imagery. I mentioned the cases, but so fertilizers management, water management, disease detection, etc. So they see the value of hyperspectral imagery, and they would like to infuse that into their farm management information system. So to answer the question of Paul, we are not interacting with individual farmers. We are not interacting with cooperatives. We are not interacting with governments. We are interacting with very large agribusinesses because we want to sell, you know, when you have an asset in space, the CapEx, so the capital expense that you need to do is huge, right? Hundreds of millions of euros. But then your operational expense is quite low. If someone buys me 1 more hectare of data, it doesn't cost me anything virtually. It does cost me a little bit of money to host the data on the cloud, etc., etc. But practically speaking, as compared to my capital expense, it's nothing. So what I need to do is to sell as much data as I can. And that's why we go for the very, very big player. And we'll see in 2024 if it pays off. So that's in a bit of time. But in the meantime, for the aerial campaigns that we do, for that we don't especially target large agribusinesses. We are more into the industrial sector. So we are thinking about in industrial plants, mining operations, that kind of stuff. These people would also be interested later into the hyperspectral imagery, so it's all good.
Sorry, I did not grasp that. Is ScanWorld a startup or is it an existing company?
Well, it is definitely an existing company, and it is also a startup, so it's both. So effectively, it was created as a spin-off from SpaceTech. So it was created in June, and we have investment from SpaceTech and from the original investment fund in Wallonia. And voila, so we have a little bit of money, and, and we are doing our business.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. There's 2 questions. I'm not going to leave them unanswered, but they seems to be need short answers from you and Julien. So first for you, Guerric, can you also use hyperspectral imagery to localize water in different zones?
Yes, absolutely. But yes. So if you use hyperspectral imagery, you can do it with a very high degree of accuracy. Actually, with hyperspectral imagery, you can even tell for any kind of crop or plant what is the water content inside the plant. So yes, definitely. But the good news is you can do it also very easily with Sentinel imagery. So Karima, I think that you can, if you think that's a business idea, you can go ahead and use Copernicus data, so Sentinel imagery. Sentinel-1 with radar, you can detect water. Sentinel-2, you have multispectral, so you have the optical information, and you have more than enough to actually localize water, even under the ground. You can do it. Voilà.
Yes. Thank you. And then, so the last question from Nicolas for Julien. So you said this is very useful for pointing. You talked about optical sensors. So would that, I guess, also work for with the synthetic aperture radars?
Yep. So basically, optical sensors is, let's say, passive. So they collect photons from the reflected sunlight, and that works pretty well to have your imagery in the visible range. Synthetic aperture radar is basically an active sensor. It sends radar, let's say, pulses, and the pulses reflect back, and then the satellite is sensing that reflection, and you deduct information based on what you receive. So a satellite is doing that is literally acting on the same principle. It is looking at things. If you want to send a pulse to a specific location, you need to orient your satellites to that location. Now, interestingly, SAR has also different mechanism where you can scan electronically or steer electronically your antenna to cover a large area. But there's one mode where it's basically spotlight imaging, where you want to increase the resolution, to increase the level of details that you see, and therefore you concentrate all your energy into a very narrow beam, and there basically you can't steer that electronically easily. So you would, I would definitely recommend to use our actuators actually. Yeah. So yeah. So the answer to your question lies into Julien. Point Tallineau at Veoware.space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that was it for today's topic 7. So I'd like to thank you again all the speakers. So Professor Walter Peeters from the ISU, Oliver Dupont from Lambda-x, Julien Tallineau from Veoware, Nicolas Helssen from ESA Business Applications, and Guerric de Crombrugghe from ScanWorld. So thank you very much, and please a round of applause for all of them.
So we close now the official part, and we will have we'll share together a little reception, and it's time for networking.